Okay, so there's been a lot of great wars throughout history, like the two world wars, for example. However, today's story time might cover the single greatest war of all time, the boys versus girls playground war. I'm not going to waste any more of your time, so let's get right into the story. Alright, so this story was sent in by a subscriber who I'll call Timmy for the video. Now, this takes place when Timmy was in elementary school, which is always a time period that I look back on with nothing but good memories, you know? Now, at most elementary school recesses, you would usually see kids doing things such as playing soccer or just chilling on the play structure. That's how it was when I was in elementary school. However, it was very different at Timmy's school. You see, Timmy's school was very big into Pokemon cards, which I feel like a lot of us were back in the day. Pokemon cards were just a very popular thing like 10 years ago. I collected them back then. You probably did too. Like, Pokemon cards were just everywhere, you know? But apparently, Timmy's school was not like a regular school in terms of the Pokemon obsession. And what I mean by this is that when recess arrived at Timmy's school, there would be a massive Pokemon card trading economy going on. Like, there were literal businesses that these kids were just setting up with these Pokemon cards. People were bringing entire binders of Pokemon cards to school. Like, the kids were absolutely obsessed with them, which would make sense considering this takes place in the 2010s, which is a time period that I honestly really wish I could go back to. Another thing to note is that there was always kind of a clear divide at Timmy's school between the boys and the girls, which usually makes sense at elementary school. Boys and girls don't really start hanging out with each other until high school, at least from what I've noticed, but in elementary school, they don't really have any common interests, you know? Typically, elementary school boys were into things such as Star Wars and Pokemon, while the girls were more interested in things such as Monster High or My Little Pony. Point is, there was already a clear divide between the two genders at Timmy's school. Anyways, so the boys' Pokemon card trading economy was getting so big to the point where it was invading the girls' area of the recess yard. Now, apparently at Timmy's school, there was kind of a boys' area and a girls' area, and there was a very clear-cut divide between them. Now the girls, they weren't very happy about the fact that the Pokemon card stuff was invading their area of the recess yard. They were getting a little bit angry about it. And there was this one girl who I'm gonna call Becky for the story. Now, if there was one girl who was the most angry about the boys' trading economy, it was this Becky girl. Apparently, her little brother would talk about literally nothing but Pokemon all day, so I guess that's where her hatred sort of came from. So one day, as the boys were looking at their Pokemon cards and stuff, Becky made a comment to them about how My Little Pony was stronger than Pokemon. Now, personally, I don't know enough about either franchise to compare them. I don't know who would be stronger or whatever, but the boys were not happy about that in the slightest, and one of Timmy's friends, who I'll call Jeremy, started arguing with Becky about the Pokemon versus My Little Pony. They were arguing back and forth about it when Becky got so upset that she grabbed one of Jeremy's Pokemon cards out of his hand and used a pink Sharpie to draw a little pony on it, and then she gave him back the card. Now the boys, who keep in mind are 9 years old and don't exactly make the smartest decisions, they saw that as a sign of war. In their minds, Becky had just committed the worst crime ever known in humanity. She was about to start World War III. However, the fighting didn't start right away. Instead, Jeremy told Becky and all her friends to watch their backs, and then the boys all left the girls' area to go back to their little trading zone in their area. And now, the boy-girl playground war has officially begun. The following day, the boys already were planning out what to do as revenge against the girls. They were trying to figure out what their attack plan would be, and what they settled on was that before recess, a couple of the boys snuck around everybody's cubbies quietly, and they were putting things in a plastic bag. After that, once the first recess of the day started, everybody looked around to see what those guys had put in the plastic bag, and it turns out that they had all the girls' toy ponies in that bag. These kids had actually gone around all the girls' backpacks and decided to put their ponies in the plastic bag, so they're really serious about this war. So the boys were all debating about what to do with all the ponies, how are they going to use them to exact their revenge against the girls. What exactly was the plan here? I guess the kids just took the ponies and didn't really plan it out. They just thought they'd make up the plan as they go along and just hope that it goes well. Reminds me of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. One of the kids shouted out that they should just bury all the ponies in the dirt, which I personally don't think is a very good idea, just due to the fact that those are the girls' personal property, and you just shouldn't wreck them. That being said, 9-year-olds don't exactly think things through. And before the guys could even have a vote on that idea, a few of them already started burying the ponies into the dirt. They didn't even take the time to see if anybody else agreed to the idea. Nah, they just didn't care what the others thought. They just went right to it. Timmy did actually feel really bad about the fact that they were burying these girls' ponies in the dirt, but after he remembered what they did to Jeremy's Pokemon card, he knew that this would be a sacrifice they'd have to make, and that it was for their greater cause, and they had to win their little war somehow. I still don't really think it was a good idea. I don't think any kid wants to see their toys buried in the dirt, but at least it makes for an entertaining story. Now, the girls noticed what the boys were doing, and when they saw that their My Little Pony toys were being buried, they were not happy about it in the slightest. The girls screamed at the boys, as described by the subscriber, in an octave unachievable by a boy. They apparently really screamed that loud, like that's how upset they were. The boys were all startled by the scream, and they just froze, not really knowing exactly what to do. The girls immediately grabbed the plastic bag out of the boys' hands, and they got their ponies back, which I think is safe to say they were pretty happy about, or more relieved than happy. The boys initially were really scared that the girls would tell the teachers and that they'd get in trouble, which I thought would have happened, but I guess if the girls were so happy cleaning the dirt off their ponies that they just forgot to tell the teachers. Or maybe they just didn't feel like it was necessary now that they have their ponies back, don't really have a reason to snitch at this point now that they have what they want. Anyways, so when lunchtime arrived that day in class, all the boys kind of like put their desks together to have a big celebratory banquet to, I guess, celebrate burying the ponies before the girls took them back. But whatever, they were celebrating, they were eating their lunch, singing songs for some reason, and of course, trading their Pokemon cards. I wonder how the girls on the other side of the class felt about this. I mean, like, you're literally celebrating burying their ponies in front of them. Like, I don't know, maybe they're having their own conversation and didn't hear the boys or something. Who knows? So once lunch was over, the second recess of the day immediately began, and the guys went to continue trading Pokemon cards at recess as they normally did. However, something was a bit off this time. It appeared like some of the boys were missing some of their Pokemon cards. It's like they just vanished. However, the thing is that the guys knew it could not have been any of the girls who took the cards, because apparently the girls were all spotted immediately as like a defense tactic or something, which that's fair, you know, like you're a war, do what you gotta do. But the point is that it could not have been the girls who have taken the Pokemon cards, so people were really wondering, how are they going missing? Something still felt really off, and as recess went on, the number of cards that seems to be disappearing was getting higher and higher. So the subscriber, Timmy, decided to look around a little bit, see where all these cards could be going. And that's when he saw something. There was a kid in the group who never really traded cards, who I'll call Keith. What Timmy saw was that Keith was walking really far away towards the girls' side of the playground. Now, Timmy wanted to see what exactly Keith was up to. You know, typically the guys should not be walking towards the girls' area, especially when they're at war. Once Keith arrived at the girls' area, he gave them something out of his hand, which I'm pretty sure you can guess what it is. Timmy saw what he gave them, and sure enough, it was the Pokemon cards. Keith was actually giving the Pokemon cards to the girls. That solves the mystery of where the cards were going, but now there was a mole in the group, a traitor, or worse, a simp. Honestly, this kid has got to be one of the worst simps I've ever seen. I mean, this dude betrayed all his boys, every single one of them, just to side with the girls during this war. Whatever happened to bros before? A certain word I can't say on YouTube. You all know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, this kid just broke rule number 1. Bro, none of these girls are gonna date you, okay? You have no shot. And this type of simp behavior is why. You don't stab your friends in the back like that, man. Like, I don't even know what to say to you. Honestly, this Keith kid just disappoints me. Look, I'm all for talking to a girl if you like her, you know? Like, I've been rejected before, and from experience, the worst she can say is no. But never, ever betray the boys for a girl, because most of the time, it doesn't work out anyways, and even when it does work out, then you still don't have your boys because you ditched them for a girl. Just think about that. Anyway, so Timmy saw Keith give them the cards, and then all these girls crowded around Keith and gave him a big bug. Wait, no, sorry, typo in the script. I meant to say hug. They gave him a big hug, not a big bug. But bro, they're definitely only hugging him so he'll continue to give them the cards because Keith is a simp. He'll do anything for these girls, even turn his back on his boys. Like, bro, I can't with this. Now, I know some of you in the comments are gonna be like, actually, Keith has W Riz. No, he does not. W Riz does not involve turning your back on your friends. That's just being a simp, okay? Like, I guarantee you, the only reason these girls are hugging him is because he's a simp and they know he'll continue to steal Pokemon cards for them. So after Keith's hug with all the girls, they point Keith in the direction of the boys area, which Keith starts walking to quietly. I would assume to steal more Pokemon cards. That's when Timmy confronts him, calling him out for basically being a simp, although he probably didn't actually use the word simp, considering this apparently takes place in 2014. Timmy tells everybody else what happened, and they gave Keith a punishment for being a traitor. He had to give up all his Pokemon cards and redistribute them to everybody else. I know some of you are gonna say, oh, that's way too harsh. This dude betrayed the boys and sided with the girls during the boy-girl playground war. I think that's a pretty fair punishment. Surprisingly, Keith actually gave up all his Pokemon cards. He actually followed through with his ordered punishments. After they made Keith give up all his Pokemon cards, the girls walked over and started repeatedly chanting, "Girls rule, girls are cool, down with boys." Apparently, according to Timmy, it was weirdly catchy, and he actually still remembers it to this day. But this is probably my favorite part of the story right here. A couple of the guys in the group had brought those little plastic lightsabers from home, which I mean, much respect. Those plastic lightsabers were a big part of my childhood too. As I've always been a massive Star Wars fan, I actually still have those lightsabers too. Anyways, so a couple of the boys got the plastic lightsabers out of their backpacks, and they started swinging them in ways they thought looked pretty cool, which, first off, how are they even allowed toy lightsabers in school? I know for sure if I brought mine to school when I was younger, it would have been immediately confiscated because those things hurt, okay? I know from experience, but I guess different schools just have different rules or something. So the guys started swinging around the lightsabers in ways that they thought looked pretty cool, and it did actually get the girls to leave the guys alone and for the girls to just get out of there. However, despite the fact that they got the girls to leave them alone, the guys still had a bit of a problem on their hands, and that was the fact that their stolen cards were still stolen. The girls still had the cards that the traitor Keith gave to them. Now, there was only one recess left in the day before the school day was over, so they had to think of a plan fast to get the Pokemon cards back. Luckily for the guys, one of Timmy's friends had been not quite spying, but keeping watch on where the girls were, and he knew exactly where the girls were keeping the cards. Apparently, the girls had a pretty interesting strategy where they were trying to seem like the Pokemon cards were with them, that they had the Pokemon cards, but in reality, the girls had the cards over by the school bags, and Becky was watching over them. However, Timmy's friend was able to figure this out, and all the guys quickly came up with a plan to get their cards back. There happens to be a window right above where Becky was standing, so the boys thought about dripping some water onto her from the window. Everybody seemed to agree with this plan, nobody appeared to be against it, and they set the plan in motion. The guys all ran up the stairs to get to the specific window they needed to open, and once they got there, they attempted to open up the window, but since they were 9, they struggled a little bit with it. Eventually, they did open the window above Becky, and that's when Timmy left to go grab a water bottle and fill it up. The plan was to pour the water out the window right onto Becky, which would give her the jump scare of her life. Timmy gets the water bottle, fills it up, and heads back to the room where he was with the other guys. However, when he arrives, everybody's just gone. Vanished. Nowhere in sight. Timmy, wondering where they could have gone, where exactly they went, looks out the window. That's when he also noticed that Becky was no longer there. Instead, in her place, was a massive puddle of water. So it turns out that while Timmy was filling up the water bottle, everybody else had decided that they were going to use the plastic bag from earlier, the same one they initially put the girls' ponies in during the first recess, and they completely filled it up at the water fountain. Like, they filled this bag all the way up to the top. They essentially just turned the bag into a giant water balloon, and they decided to drop it directly onto all the girls' backpacks, as well as Becky herself, who started crying. Immediately, Timmy went back downstairs to where they had dropped the bag, and Becky was still crying, but there was also a teacher there, already extremely angry at Timmy's friends, which is pretty understandable from her point of view. I mean, they dropped a bag of water on someone from 2 floors up. The teacher would most likely be a little bit annoyed. As soon as Timmy gets to the bottom of the stairs himself, the teachers start yelling at him too, and sure enough, he gets in trouble too, which I mean, he didn't actually throw the water, he wasn't even with them when they did it, so he could have had an out in the situation. But regardless, him and everyone else did end up getting in a lot of trouble for this. All the boys had after school detention that day, which I didn't even know they did in elementary school, but whatever. They served their detention, and after it was over, I'd assume they went home. However, it turns out that the boys' plan ended up really backfiring on them. You see, water and Pokemon cards don't really mix that well. And the water they dumped ended up going through the bag the cards were in, meaning that all the Pokemon cards got completely soaked. The cards did eventually dry, but the marks of the water damage were permanent, and in the words of the subscriber, a constant reminder of our battle. Apparently, the Pokemon cards did end up getting banned at their school after this whole thing, which I mean, it's not too hard to see why, considering the obsession with them led to a boy-girl playground war. It makes a lot of sense why they would ban it. Anyways, thank you so much to the subscriber for sending this in. I really do appreciate it. If you want to listen to another story of mine, on screen right now is the story of the worst type of teacher to ever exist.